What is up, guys? Frosty Aussie 0232 here today for another Frosty Features. Today, we have another member of our Invaders team, good old Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier himself, but we are covering specifically before he became the Winter Soldier. We are covering, since all of our Invaders characters are World War II themed, we are covering them during that era of World War II. What this is a comic book background on the toons that you use in Marvel Strike Force, and I am your humble comic historian in this momentous occasion. So let's dive in on Bucky Barnes. According to Scopely, Bucky Barnes, James Buchanan Bucky Barnes, grew up in Camp Lehigh military base after he lost both of his parents to tragic accidents. After years of training and showing himself to have great potential, he jumped at the chance to train overseas just before the U.S. entered World War II. He befriended Steve Rogers, but soon discovered that Rogers was actually Captain America. Sworn to secrecy, Barnes joined Captain America on his first mission against the Red Skull, freeing POWs. Afterward, Barnes underwent intensive training under Captain America's tutelage, and when he finished, he received his own costumed identity as Bucky. That's what Scopely's got to say about James Buchanan Barnes. Let's see what we've got to say. There's good old Bucky himself. Bucky Barnes, name James Buchanan Barnes. They're on it so far. We're actually going to go a little in depth in his name here in a bit. First appearance, Captain America Comics #1, 1940. First appearance alongside the Star-Spangled Man himself, Captain America. Been around forever. Powers and abilities. Very important to note. Before he's the Winter Soldier, Bucky doesn't have powers. He's just some kid, right? So very important to point out. He is just a highly skilled fighter. Very, very trained, right? Aliases: Bucky, Winter Soldier, and Captain America. Very notably takes up the shield. There's a lot of people that wield the shield. It's not uncommon, especially in the Marvel comic universe. In the 616, everybody and their mother has wielded the shield. But yes, so to actually take up the full mantle of Captain America, Bucky Barnes is one of them. Well, obviously, he's mostly known now MCU Winter Soldier, and then, of course, Bucky. Affiliations. As a character that is from 1940, he's been affiliated with all sorts of teams, be them good or bad. Most notably as Bucky Barnes, we have the Invaders, the Kid Commandos. So the Invaders being the predecessor to the Avengers, starting in World War II, and then they reform after Cap gets pulled out of the ice. Known as the New Invaders. Bucky's involved in both. One is Bucky, the other a Winter Soldier. Kid Commandos is sort of a parallel to the Howling Commandos during World War II that Bucky kind of leads. And then after he's Winter Soldier, the Avengers and Thunderbolts are most notable, and there's some other ones as well. Like I said, muchly affiliated. Background: he is a Hoosier that was born in 1925. Hoosier meaning that he is from Indiana. There's no, everybody knows that, and I had no trouble remembering that at all. So he's a Hoosier from 1925. So the main question is, you can't be super without dead people, right? So who died? His parents. You know, that's how it works. Both of them died like Scopely said, both of them died tragically. His mother, Winifred, died of illness. And so after she died, he moved with his father to Camp Lehigh. And in a training accident at Camp Lehigh, his father is killed. So his sister is sent off to boarding school. And instead of that, he becomes a ward of the state. And he stays at Camp Lehigh. And he trains because he kind of lives off of the patriotism that his father had, and he wants to, like, more or less make the memory of his father proud. He wants to, help the nation, all this stuff. So he decides to stay at the camp and train himself to live up and be the best he could be in the army, right? So he's essentially in the army before you're allowed to be in the army. So around now he's like 12. 10. He's 10. That's right. So 10 years old, time to serve. That's when he decides he's going to become a ward of the state. He's going to work at Camp Lehigh and train with the soldiers and stuff that are being trained there. And he ends up becoming the camp mascot. Everybody knows of Camp Lehigh because of Bucky Barnes' face, right? So more propaganda. We find that as ultimately we see it gets kind of confusing because with Bucky's past, like Bucky Barnes, as they get a little older, they find out. So in the Marvel comics, there are comics about these characters, right? So there's a Captain America comic book in the Marvel world, and they find out that the Young Allies, which is another group that Bucky was a part of, was used as propaganda for America. So essentially Bucky Barnes is the opposite of the Hitler Youth, and so they use his team, the Young Allies, to kind of try to highlight that opposite of the Hitler Youth. So it's more propaganda because you should check out Frosty features Captain America World War II. Definitely check that out. I can talk about all the different types of things, but Bucky it actually is one of the people looking back on this propaganda, and they kind of address how back in the 40s when they were written, things weren't quite right. People were stereotypical and all this stuff. So very, very interesting to check out. So definitely look into all of the propaganda business associated with Bucky Barnes. Relationships. We have George, James, and Winifred Barnes' parents. So James Buchanan Barnes, depending on which line of comics you're reading, his dad's name is George, or it was James and he changed it to George. So his name was James Buchanan Barnes, which makes Bucky a junior. But if you read most other comics, his name is George Barnes. George Barnes. So a little weird, but those are his parents. Rebecca Barnes Proctor, his sister, and then Natasha Romanoff actually is his on again, off again lover. They are very intertwined here and there, which makes a lot of sense. But we don't see anything like that in the MCU. But I thought it was worth noting. Notable events: Wakanda in World War II. One of my favorite things as one of my favorite things as far as the Captain America Bucky Avengers originally is them going to Wakanda. So there's a situation where the Nazis have infiltrated Wakanda. So they invade Wakanda, and Nick Fury and the Howlers are like they're more or less dispatched to Wakanda to lend aid. And so with Nick Fury and the Howlers, you have Captain America and Bucky tagging along. So they essentially go to help T'Challa's grandfather Azuri push out these Nazis, and they're pretty successful pretty fast. I mean, it's in Wakanda, and also Captain America stuff showing up, but due to their kind of unyielding dedication or whatever, when they go and fight, a young T'Challa comes out and he's like, "Hey, I've got this shield," like, because Cap had the kite shield. The kite shield gets broken, thrown away, whatever. And so T'Challa shows up and he's like, "Yo, here's this shield. Try it out." And this is his notable circular vibranium shield that he is so iconic, right? And so this is after he's using it or whatever, the shield is actually given to a guy named Dr. McClane, who is trying to be able to recreate. He's trying to synthesize vibranium, more or less, and in doing so, he creates adamantium. Right? So just to point out, like, a lot of people know adamantium being the metal that's in Wolverine's claws. It is essentially just a generic version of it's a generic version of vibranium, really. So it took him it took him a long time to perfect this, and there's a lot of retcons involved with Captain America's shield. So, and we talked about it in Captain America World War II, all the retcons. The shield is kind of all over the place as well. The original, it was vibranium, and then it turns out it's they've retconned it to where it is vibranium that is galvanized with adamantium around the outside. Ultimately, that's how he gets it. It's pretty cool. Bucky was there. Cool. And then another one, the Invaders Secret. So this is the new Invaders, but they're reflecting upon the old Invaders. And this is nuts, right? And you can check this out in Marvel Unlimited. It's pretty cool. But anyway, what happens is, so the modern invaders, the new invaders, they run into an issue where someone shows up and they are infected with a disease, but immediately, so this is at the time Captain America is Bucky Barnes, right? So the new invaders, Captain America is Bucky Barnes, right? But they reflect. So when this person shows up, they're like, "Oh man, not this again!" And then there's like a whole flashback scene, which is the panel you're seeing here. You can see Bucky there in the background. So what it was is so the new ones being, it's Captain America, Bucky, Captain Rogers, Namor, Vision, Union Jack. Ultimately, in the 40s, Arnim Zola created, this is before he became the machine monster that most people recognize Arnim Zola as, but he created a pathogen to use as biowarfare. And what it was, essentially, it was like a zombie situation, more or less. If they attacked you, or you whatever, ultimately it was infectious and you can get it, but they turned into monsters. They're not zombies, but they're monsters. And there's no way to cure it. So it's the last thing he invents before in this process he gets wounded, and that's when he has to transfer his consciousness into a robot, right? So what he does is he's experimenting on a village, and so he turns the entire village into these monsters. And as it comes down, they essentially, that's what you're seeing in this panel, they kind of beat the living crap out of Zola, and they're like, "How do we fix this?" And then he's like, "You can't. They're monsters, and they can't be reverted." So the invaders have to live with this, but Namor comes out and he was like, "This is it. We have to burn them alive." And they burn an entire village of civilians dead. They just burn them all. So when it comes back around and it comes back in the new invaders, that's when they reveal that they had to burn this entire village of innocent civilians to stop this plague from spreading. And so the new invaders are trying to find a cure with our updated technologies and stuff. But what a thing. What a situation to be in. It's cool. It's a really neat line. Like I said, it's I believe it's called the Invaders Plus run. So it's super, super dark, but it's a lot of fun. All right, up next is power level. MSF doesn't care about power levels, but here on Frosty Features we do. So a power level at a multiversal level means you have the power to end all of reality, not only as we know it, but how other realities know it too. You can take out all of the multiverse in a one fell swoop. Universal means that you could take out your reality, maybe hop over to another one and end it over there, and take out multiples over time. Cosmic means you are a threat on a planetary scale. You could take out small to large planetary bodies, and with enough effort, maybe solar systems or galaxies included. Nuclear means you have power equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb, which means that you can level small cities up to taking out a planetary body with enough effort. Super soldier means you are beyond that peak, just beyond the peak of human ability. You are able, on the small end, to take out a brick wall, and with enough effort or whatever, maybe involves in leveling something like a city block on the highest of ends. City level means you are a person that is trained to the actual peak of human ability. You are maxed out, super spy level trained, things beyond that, different types of spec ops, whatever. There's a million different ways in Marvel to kind of get that city level, but There it is. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian from that Hela will spawn in Marvel Strike Force. Greg, for all intents and purposes, is kind of, not super strong. So, in theory, if I had a long remote on the end of a chain, I could theoretically beat up Greg, right? As a regular human person. This is disregarding Asgardian physiology. He's dead. This is just for the sake of argument. But here it is. In the case of Bucky Barnes, we are finding a city level to Greg level situation. All we are looking at in the case of Bucky Barnes is a highly trained teenager, right? So I'm giving him, he's low end city because he's not fully developed. By the time he meets Captain America, he's only 15 years old. And by the time they go on, you go through the retcons, by the time they go on ice, he's 20, right? So he only really reaches his peak physical ability right when they go into the ice. And then he becomes Winter Soldier and such. So in Bucky's case, I would say lower end city. He's got the Captain America thing. He can do it all day. He'll keep going, coming at you. He is very strong compared to regular people, but only for the fact that he's highly skilled, right? Okay, and according to Scopely, this time, they got his name right. Him working at Lehigh, when he befriended Steve Rogers. The way that worked, kind of, that was actually retconned. In the OG times, Cap just sort of picks him up as a ward, and in the retcon, he walks in on Cap putting on his mask, and then he's like, "Oh, you got to keep my secret. So to keep my secret, you can work with me." So there's two different kind of versions of it, but anyway, yeah, he befriended Steve Rogers. That's still right. It's a little generalized. First mission gets Red Skull, Truth, and under intense training. All that's correct. So for the first time, I'm going to say Scopely did it. This is an A-OK description. It's just not quite as detailed as I go, but I think they did it. So, yeah, that's Frosty Features Bucky Barnes. I really appreciate y'all checking it out. Let me know in the comments what you liked or anything I missed. It's a character from 1940. There's plenty of history I do not cover in such a aged character. So let me know your favorite Bucky moments in the comments. I would really appreciate it. Also, check me out on Twitch, at the link above. I stream on Sunday mornings, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. We do Frosty Features live, and boy, did we do this one live. Yeah, come hang out with us. Give us a follow. Also, here on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. So I appreciate you all for hanging out with us. Check out some of the other Frosty Features. I hope that you all have a fantastic week, and most importantly, y'all, stay cool.